Welcome to the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel, home of the Granite security package. Like and subscribe for more content. Hey guys, so this has been a video that you guys have been requesting for a while now, which is the latest release of the Integral Edition for Windows XP. So right now we're in the process of installing the Integral configuration, which includes a variety of toolkits, configs, and updates. I've already reviewed the actual package, and I gotta tell you that it is way better than it used to be. They have put an enormous amount of effort into this actual configuration, and 2 thumbs up so far to the guys that are actually developing this. Okay guys, so as you all know, we always start the video off with the network adapter disconnected, and we are into our integral system at this point, network adapter disconnected. And this is what you're going to get when you first launch or log into your system. Now, the package, the ISO files that exist on the actual zip package, there contains a variety of additional installations that you could do. There are updates, there's applications, there's settings, and you can actually run those settings, installation, and configuration on a vanilla version of an ISO file. You don't have to run the integral package to install them, and it works totally fine to do that. The actual OS, once it's installed, you're not going to find much of a difference here between your basic configuration of what, say, you would have on just a vanilla version of Windows XP versus this. There's really not too much difference aesthetically from one to the other. And as far as like your installation stuff that's in here, you're gonna have a recommended programs list that they include, and then all the other things in their ISO file, as well as the GUI, the way it looks, the changes to the GUI, the colorization of the GUI. And it's all a very nice package. It's very well laid out, and it's a great base of an operating system. Now, we could run another Nessus scanner against this, but in reality, that's not what this is designed for. This is designed as a starting point, a jump-off point, right? Where you can run your games from it. It supports later drivers, later configuration, things of that nature. Now, according to the OneCore API site, this application or this operating system will not work with OneCore API. So I think the first step here is let's take a snapshot of this system. So that way we can roll it back to this point and not have to do a reinstall. And then let's install the OneCore API and see what actually breaks. Because my guess is nothing breaks. Now, there are 2 KBs that are listed in the actual package that indicate if those 2 KBs get installed on this OS, we could have catastrophic performance problems. But we could always uninstall those 2 KBs after we do the OneCore API, or even after we apply the Granite updates to this system. But I'm curious, what breaks during the OneCore API install? So let's first take a snapshot of this so we can roll back, and then let's install the OneCore API application package to it and see what actually breaks on the integral system once you install that configuration. Okay guys, so we have the OneCore API application installer now copied to our integral system. So at this point, what I would like to do is just run it. And I'm not going to connect the network adapter because there are customized updates included with this actual package. And I'm curious if during our installation process we throw an error, we can't install, or it doesn't work correctly when we deny the application the ability to install the updates that are required for the OneCore API. Now, if it fails, we'll just roll back, we'll reconnect the network adapter, and we'll attempt this again. But we'll attempt it this time with the connection active to see if it then fails again. And then if it does fail that time, maybe what we'll do is we'll install the Granite package on it, then we'll install the update package for the OneCore API and see what happens at that point. But my guess is that without the network attached, that we could still install the OneCore API, get the features and functions that we want, and still get the system to the point where it runs the OneCore API options for the additional memory allocation, the IPv6 configuration, and the addition of multi-core support. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. Okay, so we are downloading, or rather extracting to this folder in a root of our C drive for the OneCore API installation package. Okay, so we finished our extraction. Let's click on Next. Let's agree to the fine print. And it is going to attempt to back up and then install the configuration. Now, I know on the integral setup, the backup support, or the VSS, is running on this particular system. So it should just run the backup, but we're going to see repeat error, repeat download error over and over and over again. Again, we have no network connection, so we expect this to be the case. Once it finishes, we should get to the point where it'll finish out and allow us to reboot. And when it reboots, what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to modify the memory utilization or memory configuration as well as the core count, and we'll bring it back up and see if it does actually indeed break Integral Edition. So there you go. It does finish. We don't see any errors. It doesn't say that there is any errors. It actually says it successfully completed, even though it didn't have access to download any of the updates. So let's finish this. We're going to do not restart now so we can make the changes. So we're actually going to shut the system off, add the additional memory, and add the additional core count. And then also make sure that we have access to the Google installer for version 49. And we will upgrade Google to version 120. And then at that point, we'll see where we fall and see where we land, see what happens. Okay, so we're coming back up for the first time now. And we are, it appears, able to run multi-core mode. It says that we're going to have to reboot. Let's go into Task Manager anyway and take a look and see what we got going on. So we don't have multi-core CPU, but it does indicate the system needs to do a reboot before it takes effect. That said, let's take a look and right-click on my computer and go to Properties real quick before we do the reboot. Yeah, so it does indicate that we do have 8 gigs of memory. So we probably, after a reboot, my guess is that at that point, we'll have multi-core support. So let's do that real quick, and then we'll kick this back off. Okay, so we just came back up after a reboot. I will be honest, that reboot took a while. So I don't know if there's something going on the back end that it was just not happy about, or if it applied the license modification requirements in order to support multi-core, which is likely what took place. And at that point, there you go. We have 4 cores now on the system. We've allocated 8 gigs of memory. So we are looking like the OneCore API at least does function correctly on Integral. I don't see any major issues with it running. I did note that we still see 96 megahertz as the processor, which is bizarre. It almost seems like what's happening with the OneCore API is that it takes the 4 gigahertz processor and it trims it down by a percentage per core versus doing the full configuration. But it's also possible that's just something funky with VMware that causes that to happen. I don't know. Maybe it only allocates what's available at the time of the resource. Who the heck really knows? But with that said, we're looking good. Now the question is in the network configuration, if we go to open the network configuration settings, we go to properties, do we have, yeah, we do. So we have IPv6 now. So that's cool. We do have all the configuration, all the updates, and all the config stuff that works with the OneCore API all appear to work fine on the Integral Edition without having to connect the network adapter to run the OneCore API updates. Again, on my network, probably wouldn't work anyway because I'm geo-fenced, and I don't believe those updates are coming from a US-based server. So with that said, I would say we're in good shape with Integral with OneCore API as long as you install it without a network connection. Now, since we've run the OneCore API on a Granite system, we already know that the OneCore API doesn't actually cause any additional threat or configuration in our Nessus scanner. So let's run a Nessus scan against the Integral Edition with the OneCore API installed on it. Then let's run another Nessus scan after we get the Granite package installed on our actual configuration. Okay guys, so I'll throw a screenshot of what the vanilla version of Windows XP looks like so you can take a look. So now if we jump into the Integral system, now the Integral system has a vulnerability in it that is questionable. And it's been questionable since the release of the Integral system. It doesn't exist in the vanilla version of Windows XP, so it's got to be something associated to the configuration. I know once I add the Granite package to it, it tends to just go away as a problem. However, before you add the Granite package, it does exist, and it is something that I would call mildly concerning. So let's drill into this, and I'll show you what that is real quick. So if we actually read this, the reason why this is a concern is because it says that this flaw exists because the RDP server, in this case, the Integral system itself, stores a publicly known hard-coded RSA private key. That's the reason why this is a concern. Now, this error here that we see does not exist in the bog stock Windows XP ISO, the vanilla version. So it's something that, for whatever reason, does exist in the integral system. Now, if you just disable RDP on that system, then obviously this won't make any difference. You'll have to lock out the port, the 3389, or you could run just the configuration on just the modification of the port to change it to like 43389. But this particular issue only exists, at least from what I can tell, on the integral systems themselves. Now, I just assume this has to do with some kind of configuration or customization in the actual OS, because technically speaking, the NLA or network level authentication setting doesn't exist out of the box on Windows XP. And the fact that it sees it on the XP system in the Nessus scanner itself tells me that there's probably customization in the actual package that includes this setting, but has, just the default RSA tokened key associated with it. Now, that's the same key on the GraniteXP builds that we did that would have been revoked by Microsoft. So the reality is it's very unlikely that anybody will use that to remote connect, except for hackers, because hackers still have access to that key, and hackers would still have created programs to attempt to access the vulnerability to get into those systems. But with that said, it's very unlikely you're going to run into it. But it is a man-in-the-middle weakness that doesn't exist on the vanilla version, which is something that we should at least point out as being a problem with the integral system. Okay, so we're back on the integral system. We did take a look at the Nessus scanner. We now know what the Nessus scanner looks like. At this point, what the heck? Let's Granite this system and see what it looks like. So we already have the OneCore API on here. We already know that we can install Google Chrome on here, so we don't have to use this MyPal stuff. No offense to MyPal, but I don't know. It didn't work well for me. It worked okay, but not great. And quite frankly, Google Chrome just works better. So the ability to install the OneCore API and install version 49 to upgrade to 120 and then run all the stuff through Google Chrome, at least for me, from a convenience standpoint, is a lot better. Not to mention, we can still group policy config the actual Google Chrome config itself on the integral system or through the Granite package to lock it down, which is part of all the controls that exist. So let's do that. Let's just install our GraniteXP configuration on the system and lock it down. Okay, so much like the previous video, I don't think I have to run through every single portion of this, but it's pretty simple. We're going to go into the GraniteXP package, which is listed under the C Tools drive. I'm going to skip the README first because I already know what's in there. I wrote it. I'm going to go into the registry mods. I'm going to do merge, yes, okay, merge, yes, okay, and I'm going to reboot. When the system comes back up, I'm going to start my process. Now, generally speaking, the first couple steps you got to do is create an admin account, which we already did because we ran our Nessus scan. And you got to go in through the configuration and change the LM host, and you got to modify the network configuration for the NetBIOS settings. But conveniently, at least on this particular copy, that seems to be already done. So let's reboot the system and then jump back in and we'll start the update process. Okay, so we just ran our registry modifications and the system just came back up. Next thing we're going to do is go back into my computer and the C drive and tools and GraniteXP Security package and then the updates and then the WSUS offline updater and then the update installer. And we're going to select whatever we want to actually update through the update installer. So we'll install the PowerShell 2.0. The rest of this stuff is already pre-installed with our integral package. I'm going to do the update, the automatic update and reboot. I don't want to install the security essentials. I don't have any reason to install the Silverlight. I'll install the DirectX updates if they're available. And then I'm just going to click on Start. And there we go. Okay, so the WSS offline only takes one reboot in integral. So that's something important to keep in mind. Let's go back in here. Go into the C drive, go into Tools, the XP Security package. We're going to go into the updates, and then we're going to go into the full updates, and we're going to run the first script here to run the first series of updates on our integral system. And once this is finished, it'll reboot, probably take 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to have to run the second one, and this video will probably kick off tomorrow. Okay, so as you can see, we finished the first round of updates, and now we're running the second round, and the system is now continuing to run the updates. Now, at this point, generally speaking, it's 4 to 6 hours in completion, and I'm not going to sit here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and wait for this thing to finish. So while it will be instantaneous for you guys, an entire day will go by before I jump back on here and continue on the installation process. And once it's finished, I'll take another snapshot of the system so that way we have everything up to date with the Integral as well as the Granite as well as the OneCore API. And then we'll run another Nessus scan, and we might take an additional step and see if we could get the Epic installer to run on this particular system. Well, guys, I'm going to go with wah, 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 wah. Clearly installing OneCore API on top of Integral and then attempting to install all of the updates through the Granite package does not work. We threw an error and blue screened. Now, unfortunately, I can't get into the system to check to see where we blue screen and actually what the error is other than the actual fatal stop error, which doesn't really help us much. I attempted to get into safe mode, but we still throw the same error. So I'm wondering where we threw the error. Is it because of the OneCore API setup or is it because of the Integral setup? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to revert this system back to the prior state when OneCore API wasn't installed, go through the installation process again, and see if I can install the updates and if we still throw the same blue screen of death error. And if we don't, then we know the reason why is the OneCore API configuration. And if that's the case, after we get all the updates installed through the Granite package, I'll take a snapshot of the system and stop it at that point, and then install the OneCore API afterwards to see if we continue to have the blue screen of death error. Okay, guys, so I reverted the system and I ran all the updates. And I don't mean all the updates, most of the updates. I did the WSUS offline updates. I did the first set of updates and the second set of updates. I haven't done the application side yet. But as you can see, the Integral system does work without the OneCore API installed with the updates installed. But let's take a look. Let's go to CMD real quick. And let's do a system info. And we're going to do more. And let's do enter a couple times and see how many updates. We have 1,272 hotfixes installed on this system. So I'm guessing with all of the additional packages that are installed on here, we have an additional like close to 300 updates installed, which is pretty amazing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue to do the installation of the updates. And once I get all of the Granite package installed, at that point, we'll take another snapshot of the system and we'll try to install the OneCore API and make basically a 3-package install. So Integral, Granite, and OneCore API all on one box. Well, guys, unfortunately my audio got messed up on the next 2 clips, but let's do a real quick show on what takes place here, which is basically I'm going to run the configuration here to show you the listening port configuration. This is part of the network update that takes place on the Granite package, which locks out the ability for anything to actually communicate with the system. Next, what we'll do is we'll run the system info with the more, and then that's going to output the total number of updates that were applied to this system, which we're going to see still is the 1272. For whatever reason, we don't get any additional updates on this package when we do install the .NET framework and the DirectX packages. Now, I assume that's just because the updates already exist on this package when we do the install through the Integral configuration. Okay, so let's get OneCore API installed. And in order to install OneCore API, I just want to make sure that I have a network connection that's live. And I actually poked the hole through the firewall to allow us to connect to the OneCore API site and download the updates from the OneCore API. Now, when I do this, we're going to see a change in the total number of updates, but spoiler alert, it's not because we have an internet connection during our OneCore API install. Okay, so Integral Edition plus Granite plus OneCore API on the internet works. At this point, we have OneCore API installed on our particular system, and I haven't allocated any additional resources to it yet, so it's still Windows XP, but that doesn't mean we can't see if OneCore API is installed. And the easiest way for us to do that is actually to go into the network connection status, and there we go, we have TCP/IP version 6. So that tells us OneCore API is installed on this system and is running. If we go back into the Granite package and into software, at this point we should be able to go into our Chrome XP installer and install Chrome. And then we could do the conversion to upgrade version 49 to version 120. So there's version 49 is installed. We can see it right there. And if we go over here on the right-hand side, and we go help and about Chrome, we should see version 49 right here. So let's do the conversion real quick to version 120, and then at that point we'll run another Nessus scan against this system. Okay, so what we're going to do is, like we did in the last one, is we're going to go to Properties. We're going to go find Target, which is going to bring us here. Now, I don't see a reason for us to back this up since I do have a snapshot of the system. So I'm going to go into Chrome and into Application. We're going to see the difference in files between one and the other. So I'm just going to highlight all the stuff inside of my Documents and Settings location. I'm going to do Shift-Delete and then hit Enter and yes to all. I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to do Copy. I'm going to do Paste. Should probably hit Cancel on that just so it doesn't cause a conflict. Okay, great. Great. And then we'll run Chrome again. Now we can close all the annoyances out. We'll go over here and we'll go to Help and About Chrome. We should see version 120, which we do. It's right here. All right, so that still works. OneCore API works on Integral plus Granite plus OneCore API. Does a triple combination of all the packages on one system. The thing is we've learned that you can't do Integral plus OneCore API plus Granite because that causes a blue screen of death. But if you do it the other way around, Integral plus Granite plus OneCore API, everything works fine. I'm going to actually revert the snapshot and go back to before we did the OneCore API and install it offline and see if that makes a difference. Now, I'm going to assume it makes no difference because if we go back into the config here and we do system info and we do more, and we expand this, we should still... Oh, actually now we have 1273. So we do get one additional update with the OneCore API package with an internet connection. However, I'm curious if that one update makes any difference whatsoever. So let's roll this thing back to before the OneCore API was installed, and then let's run it again without the internet connection and see if it makes any difference, at least in the functionality of the actual system. Presumably it makes no difference whatsoever one way or another, but let's find that out. Okay guys, so we rolled back. We no longer have Integral installed, and we could actually take a look real quick to prove that point. We'll just open up Network Connections, go to Properties, and we'll look, and you'll see we don't have an IPv6 configuration of any kind in here any longer. So now what we're going to do, and actually we could go another step further if you really need to see it. We'll do CMD, we'll do System Info. More, we'll hit Enter, and now we should see 1272. Yep, so we have 1272. Which, as you remember, 1273 was the OneCore API with the online connection. But we're going to stay offline, so we have no network connection right now. We're going to go into My Computer, C Drive, Tools, the Granite Security Package, Software. I don't know why this always refers back to this, but whatever. We'll go back in here. We'll go into OneCore API. We'll choose x86. We'll double-click on it, allow the extractor to run, and then we'll kick this off offline and see if we have any issues whatsoever installing it. Now, I'm guessing that we won't have any issues. That'll install just the same as whether or not we had an internet connection or not, because our only difference between the two seems to just be one update. Okay, guys, so no network connection. Still, as seen, no network connection. The extraction is done. We're going to click on Next. We're going to agree, hit Next. We're going to let this thing run, and now we expect it and know that it's going to throw an error because we have no internet connection. Now, you're probably going to question as to why we were able to update it this time and not prior. Well, this past weekend, I actually poked a hole through the firewall, which allows this thing to connect. I found the log, and it is absolutely not the US that it's connecting to. Okay, guys, so as you can see, we threw an error. We didn't get an update. The system is still continuing to update or install the files. We haven't thrown any errors yet. Let's see what happens. Presumably, it should finish out because, again, we know that at least in the vanilla version of Windows XP with all the Granite package installed and no connection whatsoever to actually access the updates to download them, it still works. So I don't think that we're going to have any issues doing the same thing in our Integral system. But then again, who knows? Maybe after a reboot, it'll blue screen. So just want to see if there will be a difference between one way of install and the other. So let's see what happens. Let's see what the outcome is. Okay, so there we go. It finished. I don't see any errors. It says completed. We just have to restart the system. So let's reboot it and see what happens now. Hopefully it doesn't blue screen, but who knows? All right, guys, so the system just came back up. Let's Control-Alt-Delete to get in. We can see our Granite package installation. We're going to log in as admin because that's the default user account on our Integral system. We did create a Pete account, we'll call it, on this local system. And we did make sure that Pete was a local administrator with a compliant-based password. So 8 to 12 characters, 2 specials, 2 numbers, 2 capitals. Just so that way we could do our Nessus scan at a later point. But as you can see, the system came back up. We didn't throw any errors. We didn't blue screen. Let's take a look in our network connection configuration here and see. Yeah, so we have IPv6 now, so that works. So that means that we are able to run the OneCore API without an internet connection with the Granite package installed and on Integral. More importantly on Integral, because according to OneCore API, this does not work on the Integral system. But as we can see, it seems to work fine. So let's go another couple steps here. Let's reinstall Google Chrome on this particular system. Then we'll shut this desktop off, and we'll add another, I don't know, 8 gigs of memory or something to it, and we'll add another 4 cores or something to it, and then bring the system back up, and then we'll run our Nessus scan against it to see if it makes any difference one way or another. But I think before I do that, I'm actually going to revert the system back again. I'm going to reinstall the system as the updated version. So in other words, the 1273 update versus the 1272, and run the Nessus scan at that point, because I think the likelihood of you guys running this package in offline mode is pretty slim. And chances are you're going to want to do it online. And with that being said, I'd rather run the scan against the system with the online version of the update installed, because we don't know what that update is. And I just want to make sure or confirm that we don't have a security hole that's added by that one update, because we did run a Nessus scan against the vanilla version of Windows XP with the OneCore API offline already. And you can check out one of the previous video for that information if you really want to. That's the Granite update video. But yeah, on the Integral system, let's take a look with the update installed in the online mode. So interestingly, during the Google Chrome install, that appears to be when that additional update installs, because I haven't reverted this machine yet. I figured what we would do as a proof of concept by just showing that we can install Google Chrome on our OneCore API system without going back and doing the online update. So it appears that the offline update still installs either that one update that was missing, or the system gets that additional update when we do the installation of Google Chrome. And if that's the case, then there's absolutely no reason whatsoever you need to actually connect to the internet with the OneCore API package installer after you do either Integral with Granite or Granite itself on a base vanilla Windows XP system. So with that said, I'm going to save myself the time. There's absolutely no reason for me to revert this system, since we do have, again, the 1273 updates installed. And I'm going to just connect this thing to the internal network and scan it with Nessus. So let's do that now and see what this thing looks like. Okay, guys, so our scan's finished. And we can take a real quick look here and see the Integral OneCore API configuration. So that's without the Granite package. We can see we have 2 critical, 1 high, 2 medium, 2 low, and 27 info. And if we go back, we'll take a look real quick at the Integral Granite OneCore API, which we can see is 1 low and 16 info. Now this is still worse than if we just used a vanilla version with the Granite package and the OneCore API, which is 6 info and 1 low. But it's not changed that much, that drastically for things that are real critical. So one of the things I want to point out with this particular revision here is when we drill down into the SMB. The interesting thing, at least in the Integral edition, is that it detects that we have the dialects of supported SMB 2 and 3, which that I don't know. Does anybody know if Integral supports SMB 2 and SMB 3? In other words, can you access a share on an XP system from like a Windows 11 system with no configuration changes to the Windows 11 system? That might be something that we have to try in the future to see if that actually works by re-enabling the SMB ports and seeing if that function works. Now we're going to see obviously that we don't have the detection service indicates that there's no SMB access. Well, it's because we have the ports blocked. The firewall blocks the ports, and we also aren't listening on SMB anymore because of the network changes that took place in the Granite package. So those are pretty normal things, nothing really to worry about. We also still have the additional 6 configuration issues in here. We notice that we do have an OS identification, and the patch assessment failed, obviously because we don't have the service turned on. The OS identification is interesting because that doesn't show up in our vanilla version. So there's got to be something in the actual Integral edition that identifies the operating system. Now, something that's really interesting, which I'm not sure, maybe it's a false positive, an error inside of the actual Nessus scanner, but when we go into the OS identification, bizarrely, it seems to think that we're on a Clarion. Now, I don't know if that's something screwy with our configuration in our VMware, like there's something in VMware that's screwy, or if we're something maybe funky in the actual configuration where the disk identification is funky. I'm not entirely sure why that is. You'll notice that we have no risk factor. The asset inventory is true, so there's really nothing in here as far as an issue. But it's really bizarre that it would come back as an EMC Clarion SAN array. So there's got to be something in the configuration when we mix it with the Granite package that would make it think that it's an EMC Clarion device, which is actually really kind of cool. I haven't seen Clarion in a name in a real long time, so it's nice to see it. So I don't really see anything in here that would be a concern. With that said, it is nice to see that we've gotten rid of that one alert that existed previously in our original scan before we added the Granite package to the Integral configuration, which is specifically this remote desktop man-in-the-middle weakness. That goes away when we install the Granite package on Integral. Something else that's fun is the fact that with Integral, at least, it identifies as Service Pack 2, Service Pack 3, and XP embedded system. And that's without the Granite package. That's just with Integral. So it's interesting like that. And that would probably explain why we have so many more updates on our configuration than we did on our XP Service Pack 3 system. Just because the additional driver and configuration, supported configuration on Integral probably has the availability for additional patches to be installed on the system. And so far, I don't see any configuration issues with Integral and Granite. Now, I will say that OneCore API on any system configuration seems to cause some latency on logon, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe that's something we can dig down into and figure out why OneCore API causes that massive delay on login after authentication. So guys, I don't know. I mean, what's the verdict here? I think that ultimately Integral is still continuing to develop in the right direction. It's gotten exponentially better every package release that I've reviewed, so I would say double thumbs up to them. We've obviously debunked the concern that OneCore API can't be run on Integral Edition because it works both with and without the Granite package. Obviously, we have to do it in a certain way, so you got to install Integral and then you got to install the OneCore API, or you got to install Integral, then you got to install GraniteXP, then the OneCore API. You can't do OneCore API between Integral and Granite because it just causes an issue. We blue screen. But I would say that with all 3 packages installed, we got something special here. We got an operating system that we could do 4 cores or 8 cores with 16, 32 gigs of memory on a 32-bit platform. We have the ability to run semi-modern software on it. We have all the additional benefits of running like SATA controllers and things of that nature with the Integral system. I would think that the 3 of these systems combined is a real special package. It really does lock out the ability for intrusion from the outside. It fixes some of the bugs that we found in the actual Integral package. And it's all around good. I mean, there are a couple bugs. There's a couple problems that should really be worked out by myself, Integral, and the people at OneCore API to get the smoothness of all 3 platforms to run together. But I think, as a proof of concept, it's a win. I would tell you to check out both OneCore API, check out the Integral website, give them both props, buy them a cup of coffee, send them some money, donate them something, send them donuts, I don't know, whatever, just to say, hey, we appreciate all that you guys have done. And the links and everything will be in the website to reach out to those people, to find the packages, and hit me up if you guys have any questions or concerns. Granite will be released eventually, and I'm slowly working on the website to release additional information, so that way, it's helpful for you guys. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this video, and thanks for watching. Thank you for watching the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. Find the content of this video at https://generictechsupport.com/#channel.